Okay, I'll start. Aloha attendees, and welcome to this really important panel. And I hope you're enjoying the festival so far. This will be recorded and will be available in our YouTube channel. And also it will go out simultaneously on Facebook. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Moderator, Kerrie Urosevich. Aloha. Thank you, Kerrie.
Aloha. Thank you, Roger. And aloha, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Tuesday at 6 p.m. We appreciate that this is probably family time. And we're just grateful that you're here with us to explore what we can do to strengthen connections with our families, with our communities, with our colleagues, particularly as we all heal and navigate through the COVID pandemic. So I'm going to screen share, and we'll be introducing our esteemed panelists today. So today we're going to be talking about resilience. Hold on, let me just switch my. We're going to be talking about community resilience, and particularly how do we grow our aloha at home. And so our goals for this session are to learn about 4 local organizations doing exceptional work to support family violence, prevention, and intervention, to receive take-home actions that will strengthen connections and aloha in your families and in your workplaces, to learn about community resources you, your friends, your family, and your colleagues can use to get needed supports. So we'll be doing some context setting. What does it mean to heal from the pandemic? What is the data telling us that our families are experiencing right now? We're going to talk about innovations and responses that all of the folks that you see here on the call have done exceptionally well in responding to the pandemic. And then actions. What can you do to prevent family violence and or help those in need? So we asked ourselves in our network, I am, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I am Kerrie Urosevich with the Early Childhood Action Network. And we do government and non-government collaborations to improve the system of care for young children and families. And so when the pandemic hit, we asked all of our network partners, over 300 partners, what do you anticipate is going to be some of the highest needs that our families will have as they navigate through? And so these were the 4 areas. One was pre and postnatal care. The second was access to childcare so that our families could go to work and stay employed. The third was family violence prevention. We anticipated that families would be under quite a bit of stress with the isolation as a result of the pandemic. And then just the stress of families feeling scared about the pandemic and about their family members staying healthy. And then mental health for all of the reasons that we know. So today's conversation will really be about that bottom left quadrant, family violence prevention. What can we all be doing to ensure that we are upstanders in the spaces that we reside? So why is this important? During the pandemic, we saw families really struggle. Right now, the state only has 25% capacity to serve keiki birth to 5 in childcare. So it makes it really hard for our families to find care. Domestic Violence Action Center experienced approximately a 400% increase in contacts with women experiencing violence at home. Cases of child abuse and neglect were more intense, and caseloads were longer in duration during the pandemic. We did see a drop in reports of child abuse and neglect during the pandemic, but all of the experts will tell you that that is mainly because those that report child abuse and neglect were not seeing the kids because our kids were at home. They weren't in school, they weren't in our early childhood programs, and so they were off the radar. And then the final statistic that's important is that 58% of Hawaii's youngest keiki live in families made vulnerable by adverse childhood experiences. And so we want to make sure that we are all buffers to those adverse childhood experiences. And so we'll talk more about that. So we want to introduce you to the concept of protective factors. Research will tell you that these are the 5 components that if a family has these factors, they're much more able to cope with the challenges of parenting and the challenges of family life. I would imagine that we all experience some of these challenges in our own lives and in our own families. And so social and emotional competence of young children, how do they respond emotionally? Knowledge of parenting and child development, resilience, that parents feel like they can cope with the stresses, that families feel like they have concrete supports. So if they need support, they know exactly where to go. And that they have a strong network of social connections. So tonight we'll be talking about 2 particular factors, concrete supports and social connections. So I am very pleased to introduce you to these 4 organizations. Up in upper left, the Domestic Violence Action Center with Nanci Kreidman, Aloha at Home with Kanoe Enos, Ceeds of Peace with Scott Nishimoto, and Liliʻuokalani Trust with Marty Oliphant. All 4 of these organizations really heeded the call to action during the pandemic, recognizing that our families needed support, and they all responded in really unique ways. And so today we're going to hear from them, ways that they responded, and then they're going to share with you 3 actions that you can take with your families and your coworkers and in your communities to be upstanders and to be the greatest support that you can be for your loved ones. And so before the panelists introduce themselves, I'm going to ask that all of you participating, please put into chat your name and where you're joining us from so that we can see who is in the room. Thank you, Roger. He put a prompt in the text. Let us know your name and where you're coming from. Hi, Rennie. Hi, Robin. Okay, so as you put your names in, we're going to have our panelists introduce themselves. Welcome, April from Illinois, and Lanakila from Oahu. Okay, Kanoe, would you want to kick us off?
Sure, thank you, Kerrie. And so just a quick explanation of me and Aloha at Home, correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Welcome, everybody. I saw somebody from Illinois. That's impressive. Welcome. Must be what, 5 hours ahead there? Aloha, my name is Kanoe Enos. I am, in my former life, I was a social worker in MSW, and I've done everything from work with families to working in systems work, and now I do that full-time, more as a consultant. And so I am the lead convener for Team 2, which is out of the Early Childhood Action Strategy, and that was where Aloha at Home is housed. So I'm helping with Aloha at Home is really a messaging campaign, well, that is committed to reducing instances of in-home family violence. That's the fancy way of saying it, but really it's really to promote healthier interactions at the home, in the home, acknowledging that there is a lot of stress being a parent or a caretaker in the state of Hawaii now, whether it be cost of living, whether it be a pandemic. So how do we provide families with simple, easy techniques that doesn't come across as condescending and that is rooted in cultural values for them to promote healthier interactions? Aloha at Home started as a messaging campaign some years back, an idea of a messaging campaign. And what I like to think that me and my team brought to it was trying to ground it in cultural values, specifically the Aloha poem from Antipilahi Paki and the Aloha, which are Akahai, Lokahi, Olu Olu, Ha'aha'a, and Ahonui. And so you can go more on our website and we'll talk a little bit more. But the bet is that a lot of our families want to nurture and care for Keiki. The environment around them makes it very hard to do so. I believe that there's 21st century issues that can be grounded in historical ikikupuna, historical wisdom, to help grow grow healthy interactions grounded in sense of place, sense of identity for all of Hawaii's families. And so we are launching later this month, and we believe that families across the Paeaina will find it valuable, and we are listening and pivoting every chance that we get to provide healthier messages, healthy tools to our families. I appreciate it. Thank you, Kerrie.
Sorry, thank you, Kanoe. Scott, would you like to go next?
Sure, thanks, Kerrie. And yeah, just honored to be here amongst such brilliance and care and commitment in Kanoe and Marty and Nanci and you, Kerrie. So thanks for having me. As Kerrie said, my name is Scott Nishimoto, and first and foremost, I'm a dad. I'm a dad to a 4-year-old daughter. Her name is Ellie, a 1-year-old son, almost 1-year-old son, Rui. I'm also a husband to my partner, Tiari. I'm a toddler soccer coach on Saturdays. I'm a swim coach every Tuesday night to 8 toddlers. And I'm really just trying my best to really just soak in everything that comes with being a parent. Probably because I understand that these opportunities are very fleeting, right? Kids grow fast. These opportunities are going to be missed if you don't take advantage of them. So, I start with that because I think of myself as all of those things first before my professional identity. Professionally, I'm very, very lucky to be the executive director of a nonprofit called Ceeds of Peace, co-founded by our host here, Kerrie, as well as our co-host, Dr. Maya Sutoro. And you might notice in our name that we are Seeds. It's a made-up word that starts with the letter C, and that's because we spend a lot of time focusing our work on practicing C leadership skills. So skills like courage and compassion and conflict resolution and collaboration, connection. There are many more C's, but those are some of the big ones. And our mission is to raise peace-building leaders. And we do so through a number of different platforms, peace-building workshops for educators, parents, and other community members. In fact, we're just about to launch another workshop series later this month, bringing together, I got to check our roster, but I think it's about 50 DOE educators and about 30 general community members. We also run a series of youth workshops in the community, just to give youth different platforms to express their voice and take youth-led action and be change makers. More recently, we've been doing some work in collaboration with UH Manoa to provide resources for educators and parents to develop their own well-being action plans, as we call them, for their schools and communities. And then in the past 2 years, we've gotten deeper into our resilience work. So this effort to kind of wrap elementary youth in networks and webs of community support, just to ensure that they have their basic needs met, while also kind of training adults in peace building and trauma-informed practices. So it's a lot of work, but we're kind of slowly kind of building capacity for this movement called community schools, which is just kind of this recognition that schools can be more than just a place of academic learning from 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Schools can be a community hub where, I guess, through the right partnerships in their communities with local health centers and food pantries and nonprofits, we can make sure that our students and families have these basic needs met, so they can focus on academics and reach those 3rd grade reading and math levels. So yeah, we're kind of piloting this work in 5 rural and remote elementary schools across our islands right now. And just in general, I think as an org, we are kind of in the business of holding space and providing resources and knowledge and helping our community to take peace building action. So yeah, happy to be here. I can go on forever about Seeds, but I will pass it on to the next guest. Thanks, Kerrie.
Mahalo, Scott. And Kanoe, Jane has a shout out to Pono Shim's legacy in chat. So mahalo for that. Nanci, would you like to introduce yourself and how you've responded during the pandemic?
Aloha. I work with the Domestic Violence Action Center. It's been a pretty ragged few years for us, supporting families. When you are a prisoner of your partner at home, you run the risk of experiencing repeated frequent and severe acts of violence. And so the availability of our devoted, brilliant staff has been very, very important. Not everybody's lucky enough to find us. The Domestic Violence Action Center has 50 staff working in various programs, legal representation, advocacy, support groups, education, navigation in systems and community organizations. So to find safety and to engage with community allies and community resources is no small undertaking. So DVAC never closed during the pandemic. We were considered essential workers. What we're experiencing now is significant trauma of people who were experiencing repeated severe acts of violence perpetrated against them. So our legal team are representing survivors and their children in family court actions. Our advocates are navigating with survivors access to the community's resources. We've provided a lot of financial assistance, rental assistance, food assistance, diapers, transportation assistance, so that people can get free and safe. We've been also working to advocate to improve the system's response, which has not been very good. We'd like it to be better than it is, but it's not always in service to island families. So with a staff of 50 working in various programs, both in community, in court, in the media, in combination with our community allies, we're trying to serve island families across the spectrum. There's a lot of myths and misconceptions that the community clings to about who's impacted by domestic violence. Our experience is that domestic violence does not discriminate, crosses all socioeconomic classes, racial groups, educational levels, professional groups. And as a community, it's in our best interests to address domestic violence. Safe families are at the core of a healthy community. So it's been a pretty challenging few years, and we don't see that coming to any kind of a near end. And our motto is hashtag, it's going to take all of us. So I'm happy to be here sharing the evening with my esteemed colleagues, Marty, Scott, Kanoe, and Kerrie, and knowing that we've got a heavy lift in front of us, because without everybody's investment and convictions, we are not much closer to freedom and safety for families. So thanks, Kerrie.
Mahalo, Nanci. And you said safe families are at the core of our communities. And I think that's a really important message. They're also at the center of our businesses and the health of our business community. They're at the center of our state as a whole, the center of our nation. And so I appreciate you bringing that back. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Marty.
Aloha, everyone. I'm Marty Oliphant. I'm from the Liliʻuokalani Trust. I've been working there for about 6 years now. And our mission is to provide opportunities for Native Hawaiian children to realize their greatest potential, living healthy, joyful, and prosperous lives while contributing positively to the families, communities, and the world. Our vision is Na Kamale Lupa Lupa, thriving Hawaiian children. And some of our target is, innovative programs serving Kamali'i from conception to age 26. We focus on 3 areas: early childhood, 0 to 5, youth development, 6 to 18, and opportunity youth, 16 to 26. We invest in programs that are innovative, and we can have research that integrates social emotional support. We're a trauma-informed social, emotional, and supported service. We believe that families come to us with lived lives and they need support. And our objective is to help strengthen those families. We have a team that manages and stewards the assets of the trust to support ʻAʻaliʻi today and into perpetuity. Throughout the pandemic, we had to do things a little different. We're very social service organization. We're in person usually. We like to connect with our families. We like to bring them into these spaces that we call our kipuka, and they're across the Pa'aina, they're across the state, and they're most of the major islands. And super grateful that we had technology already at our beck and call. We had Zoom and different other platforms to transform those in-person services into telehealth. Being able to communicate that way with our families was super helpful, so that we can reduce some of the isolation that they were feeling and to increase their connections, not only to their own family, but also to families across their neighborhoods, their communities. We did some concrete needs and times of support. I said it all wrong. And we did things like distributing food boxes with other resources like toilet paper. We knew that was a high-end item at one point for our communities, and other toiletries and other things like baby formula and diapers. We did these across the island again in a coordinated event, a coordinated effort from other community organizations, not just ours, but others who collaborated to do that. We did things like figuring out connectivity, in terms of internet, and providing them with devices so they can be connected, and helping them train through that as well. We did know that we had to do life differently. We were very used to having, like I said, groups and individual work done in person, but then we had to help support our families, especially the ones who were grandparents taking care of grandchildren. Learning how to use technology was an issue for us for a while. And so now they're more proficient in how to use these different items and IT and all that sort of thing. But we continue even today in our working with our families to meet them where they're at. So we have some people who are coming back in person to our groups and to our individual work, but we still have people who are not wanting to come in personally because of fear of COVID and whatnot. Although we follow all the protocols that the CDC, all the guidelines from CDC, there are still concerns. We encourage participants to do what they feel is safe for them, and that brings them comfort. Our staff are still hybrid, meaning some are coming into work every day. Others are working from home or coming into work a few hours, a couple days a week. We are very collaborative in our approach. We know that we cannot help every family that we want to help without the support of a combination. I love what Nanci shared about the safety, and it takes all of us, and not just our organization, but all of us working together in a network of community organizations and government organizations as well. And we have a lot of staff that are eager to help and support families across the Pa'aina, but we also have this knowledge that we cannot do it alone. We also utilize volunteers and people who are interns from different schools just to help support as well. And I appreciate Kanoe just talking about Aloha at home, because that's where it starts, and we know that in some cases, when Nanci mentioned, it doesn't always feel that way in certain people's homes. So how do we strengthen those homes? How do we provide support to those individuals and families? That's always a question for us as well. So thank you for inviting us to this space. I never would have thought, this would be a space I would be in to talk about such subjects, but I'm glad we are, because what Nanci mentioned is across demographics, and the need is great, and the resources are limited. So it's good to have a collaborative effort, and everyone here on the call. I appreciate all of you in all your different roles, and mahalo for tonight.
Mahalo, Marty. And I think there's something too about normalizing how difficult family life can be. I think sometimes we've been raised to present a front to the public and to our friends and our colleagues. And I think the more that we can normalize the challenges of family life and be able to talk with openly about those challenges, the better our society will be, and the more supportive we can all be to those that are in need. So before I move on to sharing some of the actions that our audience can take in the different spaces that they reside, I wanted to just highlight too the combination of you four and just how extraordinary the response was in the different spaces. And I think that's what makes this panel unique. We have Scott with Ceeds of Peace really working hard with the Department of Education to reach our kids and our K through 12. Being able to provide safe and authentic space for our young people through our Girls Talk Back program and our Youth Talk Back programs. They often don't get that opportunity, right? With Kanoe and ʻAʻaliʻi Alliance with their Aloha at Home efforts, it's meeting the families where they were at home and creating ohana boxes that supported serve and return and that back and forth with not just the kids and the families, but also the parents and all of the adults. That serve and return between the adults in the home is just as important as that serve and return between the parent and the child. And so how do we strengthen those connections? Marty and Liliʻuokalani Trust with a focus on Hawaiian families and delivering programs that are culturally responsive and trauma informed, and being that really unique place for Hawaiian families to go to get the referrals that they need and that high touch cultural response to what was needed in their communities, and setting up a Malama line, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then Nanci supporting those families that are currently in crisis and meeting those that are experiencing violence where they are, and potentially even reaching the perpetrators to figure out what might be needed to support them and to get them the supports that they need. And you guys can all talk more about that. So in the next section, before we move on to Q&A, I wanted you all to share what are 3 actions that our audience can take to help strengthen connections in their own homes, and then strengthen connections to those that they can also support in being an upstander. So who would like to go first? And if we can, this can be a conversation. We don't have to go boom, boom, boom. So is there somebody that would like to go first? Nanci.
Go, Nanci.
Scott, you want to go? Okay. So I think one of the things I'm grateful to be among 3 incredible men in our community. It doesn't happen often that I'm outnumbered, but with Marty and Kanoe and Scott, I'm delighted to be outnumbered. So thank you for your work, each of you. I think it's important that all of us, in addition to Scott, Marty, and Kanoe, we recognize in our universe who may be experiencing harm, living with harm, and noticing what that harm might look like and how to have a conversation that's sensible, delicate, and meaningful with that person. Usually we think, oh, I don't know anybody like this, or I don't know how to have this conversation. I want to encourage us as a community to educate ourselves, teach ourselves how to have that conversation, because everyone knows someone. It's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And one of the things we are doing at the Domestic Violence Action Center is saying, what's one thing you can do? So in our heart, one thing you can do is look around your workplace, your church community, your neighborhood, your family, and see if you've got any concerns. If you do, name them. Raise the issue with grace, with an open heart, with suspension of your judgment. You know, I'm concerned about you. This is what I've noticed. Is there some way that I can support you? It seems like a complicated question, but it's a very simple one, really. And that's my hope for Domestic Violence Awareness Month 2022, that everyone in our community who's observing this session that we're sharing will scan their environment and say, is there anyone I know that I've experienced some concerns about? What can I say? How can I support them? How can I name it? That's one idea.
Thank you, Nance. You just gave really concrete language. Would you be willing to put that language in chat for everybody? Yeah, thank you. Okay, who'd like to go next?
Yeah, I'll share one. Yeah, so one of my tips or activities is to be very active and intentional in weaving that support network for your family. My wife and I have really embraced the mindset that it takes a village to raise a child. And while we think of ourselves as very good parents almost all the time, we also recognize that we have limitations as parents, as two very busy, sometimes very stressed, sometimes very tired individuals. And we know we need help. And this kind of goes to what Kerrie was saying. We need to be honest with ourselves and allow ourselves to be vulnerable. You know, we all need some help. So one of many ways to weave this support network is so my family, we spend many Sunday early evenings kind of walking the neighborhood, delivering ʻAʻaliʻi's art, my 4-year-old's art, to our neighbors. And it was kind of our unique little way to kind of connect with our community, connect with our neighbors, and to decide who we wanted to connect and trust, connect further with and trust ʻAʻaliʻi with, and who maybe we didn't want to connect further with and trust ʻAʻaliʻi with. So it's a great way for us to kind of connect with ʻAʻaliʻi, as we'd have really nice conversations with her about how it felt to give away her art and how she thinks it made the recipient feel. But it kind of made me think about what you're saying, Nanci, about you know, finding ways to kind of scan your community. This could be a very great tool to kind of scan your community, get to know your neighbors, start to open up those conversations. So while it's a great tool for your own family, it can also be a great tool for kind of scanning your community and helping others as well.
Mahalo, Scott. Kanoe, Marty.
I'll go. I just want to piggyback on what Scott said. You know, there's times where it's not lost on me that, you know, so, and as the sort of po'o, or the one who's leading Aloha at home, that there are times when my kids have a very valid argument that I don't practice what I preach, right? But that's the honesty I think that all of us need to have. You know, for me, so that goes into my action, and kind of like a little what Scott was saying was that you can't provide genuine aloha and that patience, that olu for anyone else if you can't practice it for yourself, right? Understanding that inevitably you will get things wrong, and not to sound like a public service announcement or the sort of sort of NBC, but every day is a chance to get a little bit better, you know. And I speak for myself, right? I have a lovely partner who helps me out with my Kiki, and we co-parent. We both co-parent our kids, and she helps to remind me. The one thing that I learned to be was ha'a, and one of the values is humble enough to receive that criticism or that critique, as opposed to you don't know what you're talking about, and that's a change for me. You know, I think any one of us, like what Scott said, it takes a village to raise a child. In the grand sort of timeline of the human existence, this is it's relatively a new thing to be going solo as a parent for children, or even as a partnership with just you, and outside of all of the other demands of a 21st century existence. And so understanding that if you're having a tough time, you may not be getting it right, you definitely are not alone. And that, I think one of the things that all we ask is that have aloha for yourself first, that you're absolutely trying your best, right? And that that tomorrow maybe we get a little bit better, right? It's that incremental. And ridding the world of in-home family violence won't happen by tomorrow. It's a generational game, right? So the more we practice with our kids, being kind to ourselves and then being kind to them in their worst moments, in their most naughty moments, what we are doing is seeding the generations, the next generation's healthier ways to interact. And so that would be my first thing. Have aloha for yourself so your kids can recognize that.
Mahalo, Kanoe. I appreciate what you said about being patient and showing aloha in your keiki's worst moments. I would encourage everybody to take that on as a challenge. It's a very hard thing to do, but that is the golden time where if you can do it then, you can do it at any time. So mahalo for that reminder. Marty.
There's a lot of good gems shared already tonight, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to give my 3 right now, so I don't duplicate anybody else's 3. But I think the first thing I want to say is that we have to normalize this thing called help, getting help, and really making sure our kids, our significant others in our households understand that we sometimes need help, and it's okay to ask each other for help. It's okay to get outside help. It's okay to talk to your extended family about situations. Nothing should ever be a secret. And if there are secrets, right, how do you tell people that you trust about those secrets? So getting help. I know that in a lot of ways in family violence, it's kind of hard to do that, right, to seek help. And there might be reasons why you don't seek help. But the idea is to normalize that practice. The other thing I want to say is some simple things. In a family that maybe can receive this, maybe not all families can, but our family, we greet and we say goodbye with a hug, and we say I love you to each other. And that's important to me as a father. It's important for me as my children grow up, they're longer in the house. I need them to know how much I love them. And that's the concept of aloha at home, like being able to have that, be able to say that to your family. When I was a kid growing up, that wasn't what was said a lot in our household. So I had to learn that myself as an adult when I have my own children. And so I think when I'm trying not to get emotional, because Nanci, I live in that when I was a kid. And that was my upbringing until my parents separated. And so when you share that, Nanci, it hits home, because we need safe places for everyone to feel safe, adults and children alike. Yeah, thank you, Nanci. Adult and children alike need to feel safe in their homes. So as adults, we get to those who can offer it. And the other thing I want to mention is never too late to change how you interact with your families. It's never too late. I think what Kanoe shared is important in terms of making sure that tomorrow's a new day. You can reinvent yourself. It's a decision you have to make. And it's not the person who's receiving harm that needs to make that decision sometimes. It's the person perpetrating that harm. They need to know, they need to stop what they're doing and do something different. So I appreciate Nanci sharing that and the wisdoms. Some other things I want to say real quickly is activities you can do. Go fishing together. You can read a book together. You can watch your favorite movie together. Go watch a new mermaid, Little Mermaid when it comes out together. Do things that are positive and that encourages development and growth. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Marty, and thank you for sharing too your personal journey. I think I would argue that probably all of us have a similar story of what we come from and what our families have, and how do we interrupt that cycle, right? And that's something we all have the power to do, which is very empowering. Scott and Kanoe and Nanci, I'm going to go back to you for some more actions.
Yeah, I'll share one. I think in a world that's very good at highlighting an individual's deficiencies, I think any opportunity to highlight a child's or partner's or any family member's gifts is worth the while to take, especially during very high stress times like we just faced in the pandemic and will be experiencing moving forward. One of my professional and life mentors and one of my dear friends is Auntie Punani Burgess, and one of the most powerful things she does is actually really simple. She asks people, "What is your gift?" And by asking this question, she can get a kid who's failing in school and being told on a daily basis that he's failing in life, that he too is gifted, that he has at least one gift, probably way more than one. So I personally ask my daughter often what she thinks her gift is. And, she's 4, so it's kind of all over the place. And sometimes it's drawing, sometimes it's soccer, sometimes it's making her baby brother giggle. But I love that we have these conversations so I can remind her how special she is, how important she is to our community, to our family. And at the same time to remind her and kind of condition her brain to find the gifts in others and constantly be searching for the gifts in others. So I personally, those are some of my favorite moments, just sitting at the dinner table, nothing to talk about. Ellie, what do you think your gift is today? And just kind of hearing oftentimes a different answer every time. But I love that she has so many kind of wandering in her brain.
Hello, Scott. And Kanoe, you might be able to share, I think one thing all of us on this call have had the conversation about the courage it takes to have these difficult conversations and to have the courage to interrupt, right? I think many of us were raised in homes where physical discipline was a practice, and we've all made choices to not repeat that with our own children, but we see it all the time. We see it in our families, we see it in our communities, and in our neighborhoods. And so, Kanoe, maybe you can talk a little bit about kind of that interruption, and how do we do that in a thoughtful way, and get people back to the heart of connection and relationships.
Yeah, sure. Interruption to interrupt anything that's a status quo, right? I think like we talked about it. I don't know what the data is around folks that just want to see the world burn, but the likelihood is not much, right? But those folks can be very intimidating, and a lot of times they can set the standard of how we engage. And I'll speak specifically for men. At least the men in some of the men in the communities that we either worked in or grew up in. However, what I've found is that to be disruptive takes a lot of you. Like my dad used to say, you can never lose a fight if you believe in what you're fighting for, right? And when I think of the safety of our keiki, like what drives me, like why be disruptive? Why put yourself out there as somebody who maybe is representing a softer side of being a father, or a softer side of, because for me it matters, right? The greatest asset Hawaii has, bar none, it's not its natural resources. For me, it's its children, right? And if we can protect Mauna, we can protect ocean, we can protect forests, we can protect our kids, right? And we can protect our kids from unhealthy culture of violence that I don't really believe any thriving population practiced for a very long time. And so for me, I have those things in my head when I want to be disruptive. Now, sometimes it may not be safe to tell the guy who's doing something, but what you can do is always hold your ethics on the way you engage with your child, whether it's on a sports field, whether it's in the store. I used to always say the toughest kids I knew was not the ones who was the scrappers, because you know how scrap, it doesn't take much courage for a scrap. It's the ones that stepped up to a challenge and who didn't have some of those attributes, right? It was the kid that's perpetually picked on. It was the LGBTQ kid in the community I grew up that went to school every day, That's courage, right? If you're the kid that, or or if you're the guy that you took all the stuff you need for be able for scrap, and you go scrap somebody, not very impressive. It's the one who didn't have the luxuries, but went to school every day. So when I think of those things, like my job as a dad to represent health is easy in comparison, right? So these are the things that always drive me. When I think of true courage and true bravery, is to buck the status quo. And I can almost guarantee you there's a lot of people out in our community who just need the social license to say there's another way to exist. Now, do I have bad habits? Yeah. I was raised in a certain way at times where you learn those off the cuff sort of reactions, but I apologize after, right? And I promise to try to be better every day. And for me, that's what it is. Think about the folks whose shoulders you stand on, the folks who came before you, or the examples in all walks of life of courage. And then think about how are you being courageous in what you represent, especially as arguably your most important role, and as Scott said, as a parent / caretaker or partner.
Mahalo. Nanci and Marty and Scott, anything to add for how we thoughtfully and gracefully and strategically interrupt the status quo and change the paradigm?
You want to go, Marty, or shall I offer a few thoughts? Okay, thank you. We are often numb to the environments around us, or used to the environments around us. My plea to our community is to notice the people in your universe. See if there have been any changes. Has anything been different since they found that new partner, or recently got married, or engaged in a new relationship? If there are things that have changed, that may be a suggestion that the person you're used to seeing in a certain way is now being controlled, or someone is exercising power over them. That would be a red flag. So have the courage to name that, notice it, ask questions in a graceful, loving way. I've noticed that you used to come to our company holiday parties, or pauhana, or birthday celebrations. You're not coming anymore. I'm wondering if something has changed, or you need some help in some way. I love you, and I want you to know that I've noticed a change. That's one thing. If you're a community leader, business leader, teacher, clergy person, educate yourself. Bring in some training if there are others in your congregation, or in your school, or in your workplace that could benefit from some training. HR professionals, supervisors can all notice changes in behavior, ways to be supportive, offer suggestions, give resources, or be a safe place. Those are two ideas. Another one is the importance of being an upstander. We used to say bystander. We've kind of changed that to upstander. Stand up, speak to, use grace to help people see that maybe they're in some kind of danger. Maybe they need some kind of help. And there's no shame in that. I think, Marty, you said normalizing asking for help. All of us need help in multiple ways every day. As Kanoe said, if I didn't do it today, maybe I can do it tomorrow. We're all a work in progress. I'm not saying that violence or abuse is acceptable today and isn't tomorrow. We're saying abuse is not acceptable today or tomorrow, but it's going to take the community to work together to name it, label it, support people who are experiencing it, reach out when they notice it, and help those in their universe to be present for those people who need us. Because hashtag, it's going to take all of us.
Thank you, Nance. Stand up, speak to, use grace. I like those three actions. And this also goes to sexual violence. We haven't named it explicitly, but I want us to all remember just how pervasive sexual violence is. And you talk about a tough conversation. But again, going back to Nanci's simple stand up, speak to, use grace, and we'll talk through some resources that we have for everybody on the call that are really safe ways of getting the help that those that are surviving violence really need. So maybe one more action, and then I'm going to turn it over to our audience to see if there's any questions for all of you.
I just was going to say, I think Nanci's response is, I don't think there's nothing more to add. I know as a mandated reporter, I have an obligation when I work with youth and children, but I don't take that only for those environments. I also, if a neighbor is having a problem or if a family member is having a problem, I will, encourage that level of support. And I think intervention. I used to be a child welfare services investigator. So I say this from that lens, but there's professionals who can investigate and can support child abuse. And you don't have to investigate as a Joe citizen. You don't have to do the investigation. But if you have a concern, I love how Nanci framed it. That's probably the most beautiful way I've ever heard it framed. Say something, to identify something, and to stand up, speak up, and use grace. And I love that. I'm going to use that from now on and how I talk through things. But I also think you, me, all on the call who are listening, there's a kuleana to taking care of our neighbors. And I don't want to ever underestimate the power of community. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Marty. I wanted to share a tool that I learned a long time ago that has really helped me have the courage, but also have the language, was how, like, in the moment when you're in your community, in the grocery store or at the mall or at the bank, wherever you're seeing a family start to unravel, how you enter that conversation. And one of the best tools was to learn that you go up to the parent and you say, shopping with young kids is so hard. Do you need any help? And just that, allows that person then to take a step back, to take that pause, right? To even potentially accept the help, but it's that interruption. And so just wanting to encourage all of us to have a couple of those phrases in our back pockets for when the time comes and you need those sentences. Roger, you had you asked the question a little earlier, the term serve and return was referenced. Could someone say a little bit more about that? Thank you, Kanoe.
Sure. Yeah, serve and return is a practice that's actually coming out of, I believe it's Harvard Institute for the Developing Child. And really what it says is, and for those of us who understand the power of community and the power of the sort of back and forth, that it makes total sense, right? That there is outsized benefit for little actions when it comes to serving and returning, meaning interactions with keiki or with partner. There's the brain science that says it does wonders for their socio-emotional long-term well-being. If they feel understood, they feel heard, they know that you'll listen back. And so there's 5 easy steps, and we'll be sharing our website at the end, where the Aloha at Home website, where we've tried to weave the concept of serve and return in with Aloha values. But it really is as simple as 5 easy steps, like noticing a serve. What is your child doing? And so at a young age, it could be mommy or dad, look, that's a serve. Return would be acknowledging what they said, right? And then what you want to do is create a back and forth. We had said, like, start with 5 to 10 minutes a day of it. So I've practiced it with my son. And yeah, instead of giving him the iPad, doing that for a little bit, it does have outsized benefit on how defiant he is come dinner time, right? Like, feels heard, feel understood. right? And so that's really what it is. It's like 5 easy steps, which is notice, serve, wait for a return, continue the process, and then kind of practice beginnings and endings. Oh, okay, well, we're done with that. And then, because what the child then says, like, wow, they really noticed me. They really acknowledged what I was doing. They care about me, right? And so that can have outsized benefit. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, a much less long-winded version on the website.
Kanoe, thank you. And I want to emphasize too that this can be used with adults, with partners.
Yeah, adults as well, and partners.
Yeah, and so, what does that serve that you're going to give your partner tomorrow? Engage in a meaningful conversation and strengthen connections.
Slamming the car door is a serve. or non-response. Yeah. So, and also so there's ways, it's practice, it's learning it, right? Teens will serve different than a 5-year-old, right? But I think the consistency of knowing that when they're ready, you're going to be there with grace, I think makes all the difference in a child and a partner, knowing like, well, I matter. I matter to this person. Yeah.
Awesome.
I just want to say how challenging this is to do.
Oh, totally.
I mean, not just you, Kanoe, but just in general, this whole idea of communicating in a new way in a relationship that has already been in place, either with a child who's 12 now rather than 4, or a partner who you've been with for 15 years rather than 9 months. I mean, all of these things take a lot of practice. Just for the communities,
sure.
It's a community reminder that we all have to be mindful. And serve and return is kind of a sophisticated but very simple, basic principle. When you even look at our different cultures, I'm an extrovert. My partner of 40 years is an introvert. His serve and return is completely different than mine. So those are all things for us to look through in a lens in our intimate or family relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Real fast, I just wanted to add, it's never too late, but it's also never too early, right? Prenatal. I've got a 1-year-old who I'm already doing serving and return with, not too much returning coming back, but we're working on those skills, and we're already starting to see like him engage in conversation in his own way, and he knows when to pause to listen and when it's his turn to speak, which is pretty cool for a 1-year-old.
Thank you all panelists. Excellent description of serve and return. It's a daily practice and it's free. That's the other wonderful part. It can happen in the car, it can happen at home, anywhere. So we wanted to share these resources with you, and Roger, correct me, but these slides will be made available, correct, to everybody, so that you have these in hand when you know that somebody needs support.
Yes. This is simultaneously broadcast on Facebook, so you get it on Facebook. And it's also in our YouTube channel, which you can find in the Better Tomorrow Speaker Series website.
Okay, great.
If you simply Google the title of this talk, you will get to it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And just to orientate, a domestic violence hotline is really, a time for those that are experiencing domestic violence to talk to somebody to find out what are my options. And it's a safe place. Parent Line is for parents that need some parenting support. The AUW helpline is actually, it provides a lot of support for basic needs. And then they'll refer to hotlines. Hawaii Cares is focused on mental health. So if you have family members that need support around mental health. And then the Malama line is for Native Hawaiian families and for parents. Thank you. And then here are the contacts of everybody that's on the call. I think all of us, I'll speak for everybody, but correct me if I'm wrong. Please reach out to any of us if you have questions or comments or would like to get connected. And with that, we just want to thank everybody for your time tonight and for taking time out of your family time. We know how precious that is. and for talking about a difficult topic. We can all be upstanders. And to Nanci's point, it's going to take all of us. So mahalo nui loa for being with us tonight. And Roger, thank you for helping us coordinate. Aloha.
Roger, thank you, Kerrie. Aloha.
Aloha, thank you very much. That was a really valuable panel, and I hope a lot of people access it through our website. It eventually will be up on our website in a slightly edited version, and we'll keep it there for at least a year. There's just one other message that I need to give, which is we very much hope to be in person next year. To help us get there, we're going to have a fundraiser in January the 26th. So please put that in your calendar, and I will be sure to remind you as the month goes by. And once again, Kerrie, thank you very much for really expert moderating. It's quite a model. Thank you so much.
Oh, mahalo, Roger.
Aloha.